Hello, let's talk about how to calculate the return on investment of Qt software. My name is Peter Schneider. I'm a senior product manager at the Qt company. In today's short presentation, I will talk about how to turn benefits into financial targets. But most of the time, I will focus actually on demonstrating the Qt Value Assessment tool, which is a cloud solution we have built to help our customers to understand the value of investing into the Qt software. Now, I have been a product manager for many years, and I've been also heading R&D teams. And very often I try to justify the investment in a software tool, this or that, to the head of procurement or to my CFO. And it would have been sometimes very nice to be able to turn into the benefits that I'm talking about, turning them into actually numbers, turning them into something tangible, dollars. Now, very often it's easy to explain to procurement department what are my challenges and how the tool overcomes them, but it would be much nicer if I can show over time how they turn into dollars for the company. So now it's very important to, when you calculate the return on investment, to actually understand in terms of what are your challenges, what are the benefits that a particular tool brings to you, what are the investments you have to make in order to gain these benefits, and ultimately, when is this investment paying back itself? So calculating return on investment, calculating payback period is of course super important to justify any software investment. But even so more, you want to set targets. If you make claims about certain benefits, of course you want to be able to set targets, KPIs for saying that, okay, in year 2, I want to have saved X amount of dollars through the productivity gains. I want to have made X amount of dollars through additional sales. And this is something you want to set targets and follow up over time as well. So ultimately, you don't want to only understand how the big picture looks like in terms of financial numbers, but you also want to, of course, know in detail where these benefits are coming from. Which is the particular benefit that drives the highest return on investment? Which are the benefits that actually come as complementary over time, but only a small contributing factor? This allows you to drive your change management in a certain direction. This allows you to verify also that the expected benefits are coming back as expected, and they're investing in the right organization changes or process changes to make these benefits happen. So the value assessment tool that Qt is using together with its customers allows customers to understand the different dimensions of challenges and the corresponding benefits and their value. For example, multiple platform support as a cross-platform software is, of course, one of the big drivers of value going forward. And that's, of course, then where we need to adjust sometimes the organization over time to derive these benefits. So if you do this exercise of calculating return on investment over time, then, of course, you see naturally after a while where the big benefits coming, or if the benefits are not coming as planned, where you need to make additional organization changes to actually get these benefits as planned. But without further presenting, let's look at the real thing. Let's look at the demo tool. So I'm swapping now to essentially to my browser. And what you see now is already here, the final screen, the ultimate goal of the value assessment. It's essentially the return on investment analysis. It's the final outcome. It's the last stage of doing a value assessment. And this is, of course, where we all want to go. We want to see in terms of what is the likely benefits that we're going to get over time. I assume now this is a 3-year subscription, typical SaaS timeframe. What are the cumulative benefits over time? Then, of course, what are the investments I have to make in order to gain these benefits? And then ultimately, where in terms of return on investment, payback period, and other factors that are interesting. And I can see the development of these things over time from my investment, from the initial investment, then to the return on investment. This is, of course, where we want to get. But how did we get there? So in order to understand the value assessment tool, of course, you have to go back to the beginning, where we essentially allow our customers in a joint discussion between Qt company representatives and the customers, such as the head of product manager, technology manager, head of R&D, head of quality assurance, to first of all look at in terms of which areas do we want to analyze. So do we want to analyze, for example, only the quality assurance offerings? Do we want to analyze only the benefits of Qt Insight, which we recently launched? And do we want to, which areas, which solutions that the Qt company has to offer, do we want to look at? And let's say for the benefit of looking at now 2 dimensions at the same time, let's assume a customer says, okay, I want to get into Qt developer offering for my 5 developer team, and I want to use Qt Insight then also to figure out in terms of what does it mean, what do I need to invest to monitor and analyze the end user behavior in the product over time. So what happens then is the tool will automatically select and suggest certain challenges that are very common in the industry. And then the Qt representative and the customer will go through and each of these challenges, and here's, for example, 10 that we have pre-configured for software development that are very typical. So, for example, spending unnecessary time and money between silo teams and disconnected tool chains. So what if your design team, your developer team, your quality assurance teams are all working in separate teams? They only come back together every 2 weeks when the sprint is over, and to figure out in terms of what are the connection points and the problems, but they're not really using the same kind of tool chain. They're not working together well. How likely is that to be a challenge in your company or not? And this is how you go further than all of the time. Of course, supporting multiple operating systems, even if you have 2 different hardware platforms, 1 MPU, 1 MCU product. How relevant are these challenges and how much investments do you have to make in these areas? So this challenge kind of prioritization map serves essentially as discussion ground for both the Qt representative, but also the customer to ask themselves how relevant, how big are these problems? So then we can really go through these challenges to say that some of them are not relevant at all, and others are a little bit more relevant. And we can do that for the developer offering. We can do that as well for the analytics part of Qt solutions. And then essentially what happens is the tool in the background will assume then, okay, these are the challenges that we have. Let's look at them in further details. What could be a potential benefit going forward? So what happens next is essentially then we are calculating the inputs accordingly, which means that this is the time when the customer and you can enter, for example, what are the inputs to actually make this happen. So what is the typical team size, for example, and what is the amount of people that are working on porting software from one application platform to another target platform? How much time the developer typically spends on building a functional UI from a design? All these input factors, we have default values in the value assessment tool. So essentially, you don't need to fill in anything. Well, you probably want to fill in how much developers are on the team that you're analyzing. But essentially, we have default values for all of them based on industry averages. And some of these things are already pre-programmed that you can still change. What's, for example, the average salary? We are using here Glassdoor figures, and we're offering them, counting them down to the daily rate. So you can essentially get this information. So you don't have to spend much time on fine-tuning the input values. You can just focus on the number of developers and go forward. But also, if you think that these input figures are incorrect, you can fine-tune them with the customer at any given time. What happens then is, based on the challenge selection and the input figures, we will be automatically calculating what is the annual benefit you can get. So we will be calculating in terms of, in the different areas, for example, multiple platform support, what is the benefit you can have? So, for example, we will do the calculation in terms of you have 2 persons typically working on porting and supporting a secondary hardware platform using Qt cross-platform software. Most likely, you don't need to do as much effort as before, so you can reduce the effort. Here's the estimated impact is 50%. You also don't need to do some quality assurance for those, because less platforms, same code means less effort actually in the quality assurance, because you're using much more of the same code for different platforms. And out of those, we will calculate then the proposed impact over time. So the annual savings of what you can achieve. So with these calculations, we will do that for all the benefits that you can derive from Qt software. And you can then, each of them, you can say then, okay, they're relevant for me or they're not relevant for me. And we're calculating the annual benefits out of those. The next thing we will do is essentially then, from the annual benefits, calculate then benefits over time. So then what we will do is essentially calculate how much of these benefits happen over time. What we typically do is then as well, we're taking into a realization factor. So that means typically when you have a software, when you have a process change, when you do new development project, these benefits are not happening immediately. They happen over time, which means that we typically say, okay, in the first year, you're getting only 50% of these benefits, and the full benefit is only happening in third year because your organization has to change, your behavior want to change, the product is only ramping up over time. So we're also then not only calculating the annual benefit, the potential one, but we also say, okay, how much can I realistically realize in the first, second, and third year, or whatever the subscription period we are looking at. And then we are building out of that case a more realistic scenario in terms of how much benefits can you save. And then what I showed you before, then you get to the return on investment page, which shows it then a little bit more in terms of what's the overview based on the annual realized benefit. And there you can enter then the investment. So I've done here a little bit. These are fake numbers. These are not the real license revenues, but I've taken them. And of course, then there's some cost for software licensing. There's, if you build a hardware device, there's some distribution royalties that you might have to pay. So the investment you have to make in order to benefit from Qt software, you can enter them here, including if you want to even implementation services, your own labor costs, training costs, software licenses, compliance check costs. So you can enter various costs that you have over time. And then finally, based on all this information, we will be calculating the actual return on investment over time, the payback period that you have. And if you have done that one at any point of time, you can, of course, go back and then change these values just as you wish. For example, now I'm changing the amount of software developers in the team, and then you can look at the benefits over time and the return on investment again, and you get completely new values going forward. So this is very easy. You can go forward and backward until you feel comfortable that these numbers are realistic. Of course, you want to do that in particular in the area of the annual benefits. So if you think these calculations are not correct, you might want to dive into them and fine-tune a little bit your input figures or not. But you might as well just spend only half an hour to come up with a quick return on investment calculation, giving you an idea of where things are heading. Now, once you have done that one, what the Qt representative can do, he can actually send you then a complete report. Out of it, there's executive reports, there's then extensive reports with over 70 slides that help you then to document what actually this cloud tool, this value assessment tool has done. And you can email that to you. So I've done that already in advance so we don't have to wait for the virus scanner to do its thing. So what you get then actually is an executive report just like that, completely pre-configured and animated there, which you can use then with the head of procurement or your boss in order to justify the investment. Here you see everything again calculated down to the last dollar, and you can use these slides then to go through the benefits with your procurement department or your boss and share them with other stakeholders in the company. Now, this was just a short illustration of things you can do. Of course, with the limited time, I don't want to spend more of your valuable time in this event. But of course, the value assessment tool that we have been providing helps you to justify an investment, in particular the investment in the Qt software. It helps you to identify where the biggest savings potential. So where does it make sense to do also organization changes if necessary? Where do you want to do process changes to be more agile, to remove silos and get these benefits then for you as well? The faster, the better. And then also to set targets for development projects so that these calculations, these return on investment calculations are not becoming just hypothetical calculations at the beginning of the project when you need to make the investment, but also to check after 1 or 2 years, where are we? What have we been gaining? Where have we overinvested? Where should we invest more? Where do we need to make more changes? Where do we need to get better? So this was a lot of information in a very short time. Let's take a look whether there's any questions.